Hello, welcome to another episode of That's So Tech. In fact, a pretty special episode as this marks our 12th and the end of our first season. Is that what we want to call it? I guess season. We'll be back in the new year, but we want to do a little bit more planning and be able to see who else we can bring on and chat with us. So I guess we tried to make it so we had everybody here, but Karen is in Miami. Oh, so sad for her. Ashley is off today, but we have everybody else. And if you'll notice, we are on camera, which we haven't been doing this whole time. It's actually kind of funny because when I told people that we were going to be doing a podcast, the first thing they said is like, are we going to be on camera? And I was like, no, it'll be fine. It'll just be our voices. And then today I was like, okay, guys, camera on. Which
here we are.
Poor Brittany just rolled her ankle and is actually working from home. So she's like, excuse me, what? But thank you, everybody, for being a good sport. I wanted to make sure people could see our faces before we finish this season out. So I guess as kind of a recap, I just want to ask everybody, how has the experience been for you doing a regular podcast or whatever we call regular?
Always dreamt of being in the spotlight. No, I've always entertained the idea of doing a podcast. I've had conversations with friends about just doing conversational podcasts. And so when the opportunity presented itself at work, I thought, well, this would be a great way to try it out and see how it feels to listen to my voice every week for a few minutes.
For 3 months.
And what a great opportunity to use it as a learning experience too, not just podcast wise, but tech wise too, because as the listeners know at this point, many of us are in the more administrative side of things at B4. So this has been a great opportunity for us to learn what our coworkers and colleagues get up to and sort of better understand their side of things here.
What you have you?
Yeah, I think it's cool.
The end.
Yeah, it's cool. You know, it's like podcast, work. I mean, it's cool. You get to learn a couple stuff too, right? So especially the past couple episodes, like in Miami that you filmed, I think they were pretty cool. So pretty informative. So
yeah. What about you, Heather? How do you like listening to everybody's voices all the time over and over again?
It's fun cutting out the ums and then trying to figure out how to make that work. So this one's going to be fun because there's not going to be any cuts. So woo woo.
That's fair because we're on video. Ooh.
Yes.
No cut.
Immediately says
As for being on the podcast, I know you guys are like, you would be great as a YouTuber. And it's like, okay. But it's fun to hear myself and, well, now see myself. So it's been fun listening and learning. So.
How about you, Brett?
I mean, this goes against everything my introvert self loves. So thank you for pushing me to do this because I've definitely learned and I love the conversations we've had and I love that we've been able to teach people and actually to hear feedback from my friends saying, hey, I listened to your podcast. Like ensued panic a little bit, but I was like, okay, cool. Like we're out there, we're teaching. It served its purpose.
One of the 14 listens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually I made that joke, but like I didn't really ask Heather to track how many people were listening because I think we always kind of thought of this podcast as something internally for everybody to learn. And it would be beautiful if other people could listen to it and learn something from it. So, you know, even if it's just 14 people, that's lovely. But the goal has always been to kind of make something that anybody who's coming into B4 you know, can kind of listen to and learn something a little bit faster than they would because so much of what we do is situational, right? A lot of the podcast topics got brought up because something happened at work and somebody didn't know something and we're like, oh, we'll talk about that in the podcast, right? So how do you guys think we're doing on achieving that goal? Do you think if you were coming in now and you could listen to this first, it would have kind of helped when you first started?
Oh, yeah.
Probably, definitely.
Even just the episode about UPSs would have been huge because that's a acronym or an abbreviation that I didn't know for the longest time when I started, even though we have internal documentation about frequently used words in B4 that, you know, newcomers might not be familiar with, especially if we don't have a background in tech. a lot of what we've gone through the podcast were things that I know I speak for myself, but probably Hobby too, being that we work in help desk, things that had confused us or just sort of like been questions in our mind for so long, come into the podcast and you're like, here are all the answers.
Well, at least to some of the things. We've still got more stuff to talk about because that's what season 2 will be about. So what I'd like everybody to tell me what their, and I want everybody's answer on this one. What was your favorite episode? What was the one you enjoyed the most?
Out of all of them?
Mm-hmm.
I think the one about like the storms and all that was kind of interesting because you got to learn about, well, I guess, yeah, you got to learn about just different natural disaster. Well, I know that sounds horrible. You got to learn about, but that at that time there was like a hurricane going on in Florida. So it was just learning about how tech works in different storms or, surges and all that. So that one kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah.
I'd probably say the one we did with Lisa a couple months ago. That was pretty cool.
Networking, was
I
it?
think it was networking.
Or
for
maintenance.
sure. Can't remember which one it was exactly.
I think
but
it was kind of like networking and how the internet works, basically.
Yeah, that one was pretty cool because like at the time I didn't know much about a couple of things, so that was pretty easy and it made it a little bit more easier to work upstairs. So definitely that one was, for me at least, was like an eye opener.
I have 2, and I think they were both with expert Brian. The UPS episode, the same one.
The United Postal Service?
Yes. I think when we have chances to joke about it, but then also the opportunity to ask questions like, what causes the power surge and why do I have to turn things off, or what am I protecting by doing that? And then also when we talked about the cloud and understanding that, because coming into that, I didn't realize that the cloud is just a physical server hosted somewhere else. So
yeah, it's just a physical server goes somewhere else.
Diversification there and stuff was interesting to finally come to understand.
It's not the Apple iCloud.
Well, that's one of them.
Well,
that's a cloud.
well, it's not the
you
one
guys
that we're specifically talking about.
You guys are teasing what I want to ask about next, but I'll give Britt a chance to answer what her favorite one was.
My favorite one was with Brandon when we talked about the cloud. Only, well, selfish reasons. A lot of my answers were correct, and I like being correct when it comes to Brandon.
So like Britt, you're probably the worst person to have on the podcast sometimes because your answers are more correct, even though you're not a tech. And the whole point when I pitched the podcast to everybody internally, I was like, hey guys, I want to do something like Because News, right? Where that you get the answers wrong or whatever. There's 2 segments done. I think his name is Graham or something. I can't remember what his name is, but on the CBC where they answer like, what is this headline about? And they give the most ridiculous answer they possibly could. And I wanted it to be silly because I wanted people to know that there really wasn't any stupid, answers that you could give or things that you could think. There's only things that you don't know yet, right? So, I think it's okay that we say stupid things sometimes because, if we can make fun of ourselves, then, I think other people that are engaging with the podcast might not feel as silly. I don't know if you guys have had that same experience when you're walking back through them, just being able to be vulnerable with each other, being like, okay, well, I don't know about this, but I'm going to say the stupidest thing that comes to my head. Like that I think is kind of powerful, actually. I think the people out there who say, I know everything, are the ones that kind of scare me, because there's always something to learn. So I like, how have you found your inner want to be right, Brittany, when you don't know the answers? Like, how are you handling that when we're doing the podcast?
Poorly. No, but it's, as always, there's room for growth. So I don't claim to be somebody who knows everything. I'm not an expert in this field, so I know I'm going to learn. And I just got to deal with that myself.
How about the rest of you? Do you have any problems being ridiculous when you answer?
No, because I know I don't know the answer like 99% of the time. So it's nice to learn the answer, but be fun be for, be fun. I'm doing it.
That's our charm, Amanda. Don't you know? Our charm is
That we're ridiculous?
yeah, and being able to enjoy that space of I don't know, but I want to know. I think it's really easy in our day and age to have that instant gratification of like knowing something because you looked it up and now you have the answer. But having the opportunity to sit with that discomfort of I don't know the answer, but I'm about to, and that's exciting. And
It's all a farce. I actually know everything. I'm just pretending.
she's a
For
plan.
the
So Javier, what do you
podcast.
call yourself? I think you call yourself a level 4 tech. Is that what it
Oh
is?
yeah, level 4 tech. Go for looking into level 5 now.
Yeah, help someone fix the hotspot on their phone once and
Yeah,
right to the top.
that's
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, it's funny because when I first, I don't know if we've talked about this much. I think we did on the first intro episode, but Kayla and Javier are actually our client concierges. So they kind of act like concierge for, this is a great description of it, for all of our clients. So they get them what they need, connect with the right person. And at the beginning when we did that, I was like, there's going to be things that they pick up that are more on the hospitality side in terms of, you know, how we're talking to clients and how we're delivering the service to them. But I knew that you guys were going to pick up some tech too. There's some very simple things. And I mean, anybody who's worked here for more than 2 years, I think you get asked by a family member, you know, how do you do this or how do you do that? And you can kind of figure it out. After today, Heather might be able to tell you how to connect speakers to a laptop. But it's kind of fun to watch the journey, and I'm going to answer telephones and I'm going to tell them they have to talk to a tech to, yeah, making jokes about being a level 4 tech, but actually providing things that are actually useful when it comes to technological subjects, right? I'm interested to see, you know, 2 years down the road, what else you guys are going to be able to do, right? So that'll be kind of fascinating. If you could think about, and we'll kind of talk about this from 2 different angles, but if you could think about one thing that you don't know about right now, but that you hear a lot that you'd like to know more about, what would it be? It's okay to take a minute because we'll just put the pondering on the video side. And then when Heather cuts together the audio for the podcast, she'll just cut that out.
I want to better understand servers, like the physical servers and how servers and PCs are built. I have a very limited understanding. I helped my husband build mine. I put the paste on and I, you know, put
There's
the fan.
paste.
Yes.
See, I learned something new. Maybe I need to learn about servers as well.
But just more of the hardware aspect of things I'd love to learn about.
I feel I'm the same as well. It's like you can look at a computer, you can look at this, but when you open it up, it's like, what does this cord do? What does this do? Like, how does this?
Cut the red cord.
What
What about you?
about you, Javi?
I feel like I would want to learn more about like why servers crash in a
Okay.
way, like what the reason why they do that, even though like, for example, I was talking to one of the Teresa actually about yesterday, like there was a server down, but they had multiple servers. So one of them wasn't really affecting them what they were doing, but it was still down.
Mm.
So we were like,
Yeah.
okay, why does that, you know, like things like that.
Why is
Why
that
does it
okay?
happen? What does it do? Why does it only affect one little thing and not everything else?
Mhm.
Things like that's kind of interesting, you know. So
Yeah, there's probably a lot in there too about how infrastructure is planned that could be really interesting to talk about. The main reason why I'm asking that is because I get to plan what we're going to do next year and who we talk to. So that's great technical stuff. What about you, Britt? What do you want to learn more about? Please say DNS.
Yeah, that was definitely going to be top of my list because every DNS we're talking about is the wrong one and I can never grasp it. SharePoint, obviously want to learn about that. Microsoft products and licenses always. There's just so many of them and it's so complicated and all the different tiers and what they do. And I don't know if that's even a podcast worthy subject, but it's something I need to learn.
I
We could have
actually
a
think
whole
it would
podcast
be.
about. I was
What?
just gonna say we could have a whole podcast about all of the Microsoft products that have changed names in the last year.
Yeah,
Mm,
every 2 years.
yeah, everybody loves the name Entra around here, right?
Yeah.
Why? Anyway, that's another, no, we're not
Yeah.
doing that.
What?
We,
Heather's in.
Was I supposed to say something?
He-
Sorry,
Heather-
I didn't hear you.
Heather in marketing, you don't need to worry about it. It's fine.
My own little island.
If you were to suggest that we suddenly change names of things, you might have some people go, no, because we know what it's like when you're dealing with a product and it suddenly just changes its name for no apparent reason. But
Yeah.
anyway.
I mean, we kind of did do that.
Don't, Brittany. No, no, we didn't.
Okay.
No, we didn't. We're fine. We're completely fine. So if you were going to learn, and if you think about the podcast that came from IT Nation, if you were going to learn something, you know, that on the next season, I should say, that is maybe something you need to know for tech, but isn't something that is actually like a technical skill or how something works. Is there anything that anybody can think about? Because I know that when we get into the IT Nation stuff in a minute, like a lot of the stuff that people who are technical brought up was not actual technical advice. It was more about how to operate in the space, right? Is there anything else that you guys would want to hear about?
Client relations, customer service. I know we are working really hard on that internally, and I think just the more feedback we get from clients, the more conversations we have with them about where things can improve or where we're doing great. That's all such helpful feedback, and being able to share that with the rest of our team, even those who, you know, are more rarely speaking with clients. That's top of my list. If I have a chance to speak with anyone who's been in this industry for a long time and has, you know, different tips and tricks for that side of things, I'm ears wide open for sure.
I would
Yeah.
even just say communication as a whole, like with clients and within, because there's a lot of moving parts at all times within our organization. So how do we better communicate where we're at and what we're doing next and what's been done, and then carry that over to clients and letting them know what we've done, and just kind of closing the loop with communication.
Great point.
'Cause- yeah, and it would help my concierges out too.
100%.
I think for me, I think the one thing that I've kind of, it's a twofold thing. So like, I want to know more about the order of operations. You know, I always kind of ask questions, and probably within 2 or 3 seconds, maybe a little bit more, I always say, I'm not a tech. Explain to me like I'm not a tech, right? But as my technical knowledge grows, I mean, I'm the one leading the SharePoint migration here internally, right? As my knowledge grows, I start to realize that one of my biggest struggles is I can consume how one piece of something works, but because I'm not technical doing it every single day, I don't know what order things should go in. So I find myself looking here, and then I look here, and then I look here and look here. And by the time I've looked everywhere, I kind of figure it out. But it would be really lovely to have, you know, maybe some people on who can kind of talk about where you should start, because whether we're talking about ourselves or how we advocate for clients or clients too, I think that's true for a lot of people. Like they don't necessarily know where to start on something, you know, and that could apply to what training to take, that could apply to how a product works. There's many different ways that we could think about it. So I'm kind of interested in seeing if we can get some people in to talk about that. And I think when you talk about communication, or when you talk about what the client knows, how can we do that? How can we do that if we don't understand ourselves, right? Like where's the information come? If we're supposed to have it flow through us, how do we get it? Because we don't need to know the ins and outs of deploying something, but we do need to know if there's information that we need from the client. We do need to know, you know, what stages things might go in and what hiccups we might see. And I think, you know, the people of this world who are more client driven, who are more communicative in nature, really could probably use a lot of direction from technical people about what that looks like without getting into the nitty gritty. If that makes sense.
That definitely makes sense.
So I come to you guys now then and specifically ask about the IT Nation podcast. So first of all, I'll explain kind of what I did. When we started this podcast, I really wanted to make sure admins were included. When I went to IT Nation, though, I kind of realized it was a beauty opportunity to talk with a fair amount of technical people and some of our partners at the same time and get some feedback. So I wish I could have taken all of you to Florida with me. I mean, that would have been great. And, you know, sometimes the answers we got were on the side of the convention floor. We go outside in the sun, so you might hear random stuff in the background. So it's not like I could call anybody in, but I was curious, to hear a little bit more about what specific podcast episode from IT Nation maybe spoke to you guys a little bit more and what you took from it.
I liked number 2, part 2. I think two of the things that were discussed were obviously communication, and that's something that is big no matter where you are. But another thing that was discussed, I believe it was Mendy saying,
It is Mendy, yeah.
saying understanding. So for me, like, I don't know a lot of stuff. So I might not understand it right away, but if like the tech understands that I don't understand, and if I understand that they know a lot, like, just if we can come to a level where we both understand, that would be nice. And that's my thoughts.
Well, that's pretty meta. Like, that sounds like a conversation with Mendy pretty much anytime. So I love that Heather had notes, though. That's my
Yes, and now everyone's looking at my notes.
Kayla, are you trying to make sense of them?
No, I did get a chance to listen to all of them, and then so looking back, I wanted to see like just Heather's little cliff notes there. And it does remind me that the third part where we talk about, working smarter, not harder, that's something that's listed within our core values here too. And it's something to just always keep in mind, that there might be a process that you don't know that could, shorten your workload. And that level of communication that we want to have with our coworkers can always help us get there. So if we're like, I don't know if I'm doing this in the right way, maybe I'm, not using my time wisely by taking an hour and a half to do this task. Let's see if there's a different way. I experienced that here when Brandon was still on help desk, and I was exporting data from ConnectWise, and I was going through and didn't understand fully how I could do some of the filtering to do it and export it that way. And instead, I was kind of typing a lot of the data entry into Excel myself. And that 3 minutes that someone can take with you and go, look, hey, if you do this, click, 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 click. Now save that as a filter for later, and you can export it each time you need it. And I still use that filter all the time. So thank you, Brandon.
The wizard himself. What about Javier? Did you get a chance to listen to any of the episodes?
Do you need my
I
notes?
to listen to the third one only, and it goes to the same thing about the processes. Or like it's the same thing as Kayla said, right? Just work smarter, not harder. So like Kayla said, sometimes there is a process, and somebody might just have a better way of doing it or easier way of doing it, but sometimes you don't share it, or sometimes you don't know about it because you don't say it, right? Or you just think that they're all doing the same way or the same process, but unfortunately that isn't the way. So making sure that
if you only
everybody's
listened
doing
to episode 3, then I'm surprised you're not saying lock it up, because I feel like you've gotten yourself like caught a
On the
couple
computer?
times.
Yeah,
Hashtag lock it up 2023. Thanks,
There you go,
Matt.
Matt.
about the computer, right?
Yeah.
I do it on purpose. Nobody touches it anymore.
Well, it's not
'cause-
fun if you leave your computer open on purpose for us to.
That's what I mean, right? Like I prevent that by happening by telling them, hey, it's open, do whatever you want. Nobody does it.
I did
Yeah,
it
but
once.
you could also prevent.
Yeah, that won't
this
work
way.
out in the wild, Javier, so don't
In
do
the
that.
wild, no, in the wild, I'll always lock my
In the
computer.
wild.
You gotta
You know?
get into the habit.
In
that
the wild,
risks aren't there.
I always outside leave it, but I'm like, I have nothing to hide. Go.
It's not that we want you to hide things, but it's important to build habits in moments where you're not like otherwise overwhelmed or distracted or whatever, right? If you build the habit to wash your hands when you're at home and they're not dirty, then when you're out at a restaurant, you'll still wash your hands, so
Oh,
lock your
that's-
computer.
I do it because I find it funny that everybody's so like, yeah, I want to do it. It's like, do it. Go ahead. And they don't do it anymore. I find it funny.
And I'm changing your background to so many goats. I'm gonna make a goat with
Yes.
a Bradley Cooper face.
Can we block the Bradley Cooper Google search in
Yes.
his computer?
I don't search that often.
But you'll.
I mean, I
never
feel
do
like I've
again.
seen a variety of images of Bradley Cooper on your background, so I don't know if that's true.
I
but-
think it's the same one.
It's the same one.
Yeah, it's the one from American Sniper, which I watched on Valentine's Day this year. It was a very good, Valentine's Day movie.
I would say, Brittany, which one did you enjoy from Mighty Nation and what did you take from it?
I think it was the first one when we discussed imposter syndrome because that is something I suffer from deeply. Especially I started out as like Heather, I was the marketing girl. And now all of a sudden I'm the pro services manager in an industry I don't know too much about. So I can relate, and especially being female too, female non-tech in a tech industry, I definitely suffer from imposter syndrome. And on the daily, I'm figuring out ways how to deal with it. And it's just a constant uphill battle, I feel. But women, we will win the war.
Woo!
To give you credit though,
Certainly won't step for.
you get put in
Yes.
that role. You trialed it, and because it was so well suited to your, I don't know, was it a fish swimming? Anyway, you trialed it. It was very well suited to your skill set, and you brought a lot to it, that a lot of organization that wasn't there before. So kudos to Brittany. Imposter syndrome is funny that way, though. It'll tell you that you don't belong, or that, you don't know something and somebody else is better than you. But the flip side of that is that, nobody knows everything, and we're all just learning and kind of growing together. So, I think that's a great place to kind of leave this podcast episode. And thank you to my fellow non-techs at B4 for putting up with I don't know if it would say putting up with, but enjoying maybe our crazy rambles, our weirdness, and for putting yourselves out there. Anybody new that would come in would be better off knowing, and anybody who's listening probably is learning something even about how our brains work. Techs also have a lot to learn about how people process information. So on that note, I will say thanks to everyone for coming today. Hello, thanks everybody. I was waiting for jazz hands. And it's not the pandemic if you don't wave at a camera, right? And we're not, it's still in the pandemic, but I'm just saying it's like leftover. But we will be back probably sometime in the new year in February. And this time we will pre-record all of our episodes so that Heather cannot have a heart attack. And we look forward to chatting with you soon. If you think of anything that you'd like to hear us talk about, or if you yourself are in a similar position and you want to learn something more, we'll have some pretty amazing guest wizards and experts next year. So thankfully, some of the people from IT Nation have actually volunteered to come back on a more regular basis. So it'll be super interesting to see where that lands up. So hope you come back and tune in to find out where we go.